You open your eyes, not to sunlight streaming through glass, not to the buzz of an alarm clock, but to a gentle pulse of bioluminescent patterns rippling across living walls that breathe with you. The room knows you're awake before you do. It has measured your heartbeat, tracked the shift in your body temperature, sensed the microsecond change in the electromagnetic field your consciousness creates when it surfaces from sleep. This is your home in 2126. You stand and the floor responds. Not cold, not hard. Something between memory foam and living tissue, grown rather than installed, engineered from mycological networks that learned your weight distribution over months of adaptation. Each step sends subtle feedback through the structure, updating a neural map of your daily patterns, your habits, your health. The house is not watching you, it is you. An extension of your biology, built from systems that blur the line between structure and organism. You walk toward what used to be called a window. Now it's a membrane, translucent when you want privacy, transparent when you crave connection to the world outside. But it's not glass. Glass belonged to an era when homes were boxes that separated you from nature. This material is grown from silica-based polymers mixed with photosynthetic bacteria. It drinks sunlight, converts it, feeds it back into the home's energy ecosystem. The view outside is not what your great-great-grandparents would recognize as a neighborhood. There are no roofs, no rectangular lots, no driveways or garage doors or mailboxes standing like sentries at the curb. What you see instead are organic forms rising from the earth like coral formations. Each home a unique topology shaped by the needs of the people inside and the landscape that holds it. Some homes spiral upward in helical patterns. Others spread horizontally, their living roofs thick with vegetation that filters rainwater and produces oxygen. A few are partially underground, their southern exposures capturing solar gain, while their northern flanks nestle into hillsides for thermal mass. You wonder how it all happened, how humanity arrived here at this moment, where homes are no longer built but cultivated, no longer designed to resist nature but engineered to participate in it. The answer is not a single breakthrough, not one invention or one visionary architect. It was necessity, crisis, the slow, grinding pressure of climate collapse, resource depletion, and the exponential curve of technological integration that left the old ways of building as obsolete as the horse-drawn carriage. But standing here now, you realize something else. This home knows things about you that no structure in history ever could. It anticipates your needs, regulates your environment, even monitors your health with a sophistication that would have seemed like magic a century ago. And that raises a question you can't quite shake, one that sits at the edge of your awareness like a shadow you're not ready to face. What does it mean to live inside something that's alive? The transformation didn't happen overnight. It began in the 2030s, when the first bio-integrated structures emerged from research labs in Singapore and Copenhagen. Scientists had been experimenting with engineered bacteria that could produce calcium carbonate, the same compound found in seashells and coral. They discovered that by directing bacterial growth through carefully designed scaffolds, they could literally grow structural elements, columns, beams, wall sections. The process was slow, inefficient, and wildly expensive, but it proved a concept that would reshape everything. By the 2050s, the climate crisis had made traditional construction untenable in many regions. Concrete production alone had accounted for 8% of global carbon emissions. Steel manufacturing devoured energy. Lumber harvesting stripped forests faster than they could regenerate. Meanwhile, sea levels rose, megacities flooded, wildfires turned suburban developments into ash. The insurance industry collapsed first, refusing to cover homes in increasingly uninhabitable zones. Then the mortgage system fractured. Then the construction industry itself began to splinter, searching desperately for alternatives that could survive the world humanity had created. The breakthrough came from an unexpected direction: mycelium architecture, fungal networks that could be grown in molds, compressed, and treated to create materials stronger than concrete and lighter than timber. A Dutch collective proved you could grow a 3-bedroom house in 6 weeks using agricultural waste as feedstock. The structure was fireproof, earthquake-resistant, and completely biodegradable at end of life. More importantly, it was carbon negative. Every home grown from mycelium pulled more CO2 from the atmosphere than its construction released. The technology spread like the fungi it was based on. Within 2 decades, genetic engineering had advanced to the point where designers could program specific properties into biological building materials. Need better insulation. Splice in genes from Arctic moss that creates air pockets for thermal regulation. Want self-healing walls. Incorporate bacterial strains that produce biocement when exposed to air. Require structural elements that respond to seismic activity. Engineer muscle-like tissues that tense and relax based on ground motion sensors. By 2100, the concept of separating a building from its systems had become obsolete. Your home in 2126 doesn't have plumbing installed in walls. It has circulatory channels grown into the structure itself, lined with biofilms that purify water as it flows through. There's no HVAC system bolted to the roof. Instead, the walls themselves regulate temperature through networks of capillary-like tubes filled with phase-change materials that absorb heat during the day and release it at night. The lighting doesn't come from fixtures. It emanates from bioluminescent panels cultivated from deep-sea organism genetics, their glow triggered by circadian rhythms synced to your body's natural clock. You move through your home and notice the subtle gradients. Each room exists in its own microclimate. The sleeping area stays slightly cooler, the air enriched with oxygen-producing plants embedded in the ceiling structure. The workspace maintains higher alertness through spectrum-adjusted lighting and gentle air currents that prevent stagnation. The meditation corner dampens sound through recursive geometry in the walls, surfaces designed to absorb rather than reflect. None of this requires programming or manual adjustment. The house learned your preferences through years of cohabitation, adapting its responses the way your body adapts to exercise. Outside, the neighborhood functions as an interconnected ecosystem. Underground mycelial networks link every home, creating a communication web that shares resources, distributes energy, and balances water usage across the community. When one home produces excess solar energy, it flows through biological conduits to neighbors who need it. When rainfall concentrates on one property, the network redistributes it through capillary action to areas experiencing drought stress. The homes don't just coexist, they cooperate, forming what ecologists call a superorganism. But you sense something else happening here, something harder to name. A shift in the fundamental relationship between human and habitat. You place your hand against the wall. It's warm, not from sunlight or heating elements, but from metabolic processes happening within the structure itself. Billions of engineered cells respiring, consuming organic matter, producing energy. The wall isn't just warm, it's alive. And for a moment, standing there with your palm pressed against living architecture, you feel something unsettling. Connection, yes, but also dependency. A bond that goes deeper than tenant and dwelling. This home knows when you're sick before you do. Sensors woven into every surface monitor your biometrics continuously. Elevated cortisol levels trigger adjustments in lighting and air composition to reduce stress. Irregular heartbeat patterns prompt the floor to guide you toward resting areas through subtle temperature gradients. Early markers of inflammation cause the air filtration to increase anti-inflammatory compounds derived from plant terpenes. The system doesn't alert you, doesn't send notifications. It simply acts the way your immune system responds to threats without conscious instruction. Some people find this comforting, others find it invasive. The debate has raged for decades now. Privacy advocates argue that homes have become surveillance systems, gathering intimate data about every aspect of human biology and behavior. They point to cases where insurance companies accessed health data from residential monitoring systems, where employers demanded biosensor feeds as conditions of remote work, where governments subpoenaed household AI records during investigations. The architecture of 2126 knows too much, they say. It sees too clearly, but you've made your peace with it. Because the alternative was worse. You remember the stories your grandmother told about the 2040s, when extreme weather events killed thousands every summer. Heat domes that turned poorly insulated homes into ovens. Cold snaps that froze people in structures designed for a climate that no longer existed. The old architecture was dumb, inert, incapable of protecting the people inside it. These living homes, whatever their complications, keep you alive in ways the previous generation couldn't imagine. You walk through the central atrium where a vertical garden climbs 30 feet toward the translucent ceiling. This isn't decoration, it's life support. The plants produce roughly 30% of your oxygen, filter airborne toxins, and regulate humidity. But they also do something else. They respond to sound, to movement, to your presence. Studies have shown that plants can detect human emotional states through electrical field changes and volatile organic compound signatures. The garden in your home has been growing alongside you for years. It knows your rhythms, your moods, your health cycles. Does it care about you? The question seems absurd. These are engineered organisms, biological machines programmed for function. But then again, what is caring but response? What is empathy but the ability to sense another's state and adjust accordingly? Your home does this constantly, tirelessly, without complaint or expectation of reward. It exists in service to your well-being. If that's not a form of relationship, what is? You think about the people who rejected this transition, the communities that clung to traditional construction methods, building concrete and steel structures even as the materials became scarce and expensive. They called themselves purists, preservationists, defenders of human autonomy against the creeping integration of biological systems into daily life. Some established isolated compounds in regions where old-world building was still permitted. Others formed underground networks, sharing blueprints for pre-2050 architecture, treating construction knowledge like samizdat. You understand their fear. There's something profound about crossing the threshold from tool to symbiont. Tools you control, symbiotes control you back. They make demands, create dependencies, change the nature of what it means to be an independent agent. When your home can influence your mood, regulate your health, and shape your behavior through environmental manipulation, where does the home end and you begin? But perhaps that's the wrong question. Perhaps the distinction was always an illusion. Humans have never been independent agents. You've always existed in relationship with your environment, shaped by the structures you inhabit and the systems you depend on. The only difference now is that the relationship is bi-directional, acknowledged, designed rather than accidental. You sit in a chair that molds itself to your body and wonder what your great-great-grandchildren will think of this moment. Will they see 2126 as primitive? Will they laugh at the crude biological systems you think of as sophisticated? Or will they look back with envy at a time when humans still maintained some separation from their environments, some boundary between self and system? The house shifts slightly around you, adjusting to your contemplative state. The sun is setting now. You watch through the membrane wall as the sky transforms into layers of amber and violet, colors that seem more vivid than you remember from childhood. Maybe the atmosphere has changed. Maybe your eyes have adapted. Or maybe the wall itself is filtering the light, enhancing certain wavelengths to trigger neurochemical responses associated with peace and reflection. You'll never know for certain, and somehow that's okay. You've learned to live with ambiguity, with the understanding that your experience is mediated, shaped, co-created by systems too complex to fully comprehend. This is the fundamental lesson of 2126. Control was always an illusion. The homes your ancestors built, those rigid boxes of wood and drywall and rigid geometry, they seemed controllable because they were inert. But they controlled too, in ways nobody acknowledged. They dictated movement patterns, influenced social interaction, shaped psychology through spatial arrangement. At least now the influence is intentional, optimized, responsive. The bioluminescent walls begin their evening glow. Soft blue light emanates from panels cultivated specifically for this transition hour. The wavelength calibrated to ease your body toward rest without triggering melatonin production too early. In 2 hours, the spectrum will shift toward amber. In 4 hours, near darkness, broken only by gentle pulses synchronized to optimal sleep rhythms. The house is guiding you through the night the way a parent might guide a child, with patience and consistency, and something that resembles care. You think about legacy, about what humanity has gained and lost in this transformation. The homes of 2126 are marvels of integration, sustainability, responsiveness. They've solved problems that plagued civilization for centuries: energy scarcity, environmental destruction, the disconnect between human needs and built space. But they've also introduced new questions, new anxieties, new forms of dependence that your ancestors never had to navigate. Is it worth it? You believe it is. Because the alternative is not the past. The alternative is extinction. The climate chaos that drove this transformation isn't reversible. The resource constraints that made biological building necessary aren't temporary. Humanity adapted or disappeared. You chose adaptation. And with that choice came everything you see around you now: the living walls, the breathing floors, the homes that know you better than you know yourself. There's a moment right before full darkness when the house goes completely still. No adjustment, no response, just presence, as if the structure itself is taking a breath. And pausing between the demands of day and night, you feel it in your bones, this shared moment of transition, and you realize that's what makes this bearable. The house doesn't just monitor and adjust, it inhabits time with you, experiences duration, moves through cycles of activity and rest that mirror your own. You are not alone in this space. You are accompanied, held, known. And while that knowing comes with complications and compromises and questions about autonomy, it also comes with something humans have sought since they first built shelters against the dark. It comes with belonging, with the sense that your environment is not hostile or indifferent, but attuned, responsive, alive. The homes of 2126 are not perfect. They're experiments in coexistence, ongoing negotiations between human need and biological capability, between individual autonomy and collective survival. They'll evolve. Your great-great-grandchildren will inhabit structures you can't imagine, built from technologies that don't yet exist, addressing challenges you haven't foreseen, but they'll carry forward this fundamental shift, this recognition that buildings are not separate from life, but part of it. You stand and move toward your sleeping area. The house responds, dimming lights along your path, adjusting temperature, preparing the space for rest. Tomorrow, you'll wake to those bioluminescent patterns, to the gentle pulse that says you're home, you're safe, you're known. And the cycle will continue. Human and habitat, breathing together, growing together, learning what it means to truly coexist. If this vision of the future resonates with you, if it makes you think about the relationship between humanity and the spaces we inhabit, leave a like and subscribe. Share your thoughts in the comments. What excites you about living architecture? What concerns you? The conversation matters. Because the future isn't something that happens to us. It's something we build together, one choice at a time, one home at a time, one vision at a time. The walls pulse softly around you, breathing, living, waiting for tomorrow.